My name is Sherry Robbins, and I am a licensed psychotherapist as well as a content creator for the Center for Transformation Institute. The other day, I was talking to a fellow therapist about the challenge of being triggered by clients who treat us poorly. If you've been in this line of work for any amount of time, you have probably experienced a few very difficult clients. And you probably have clients on a regular basis who like to just make jabs or complain about you as a person or the way you handle your practice or your policies. A few years ago, I had a client who would make accusations toward me during every session. She would put me down. She would say I wasn't helping her, that I'm making her worse, and you name it. Whenever I would see her, I would be just unraveled the rest of the day. I would feel like, I need to decompress, I need a break. And I would replay those things that she said over and over in my head. I would be anxious or dreading that seeing her on the days that she was on my schedule. And I really wanted to provide empathic care for her, but I was always on guard and bracing for hurtful words from her. I knew her behavior was irrational and her words about me weren't true, but somehow I managed to experience a mental and emotional battle over them. And I wanted to prove her wrong. I never would say anything to her, but I would think about the ways that I would prove that I'm not who she said I was. I know this is a more extreme situation than our average clients that we see, but we all have clients from time to time who comment negatively about the way we provide care, the way we like our practice policies, and they have a way of making us feel bad for having boundaries, or really just because they're not in control. A few years ago, I started putting into practice some life model principles that I had been learning from my own personal emotional maturity, that they completely changed the way I experience clients. The first thing I started to understand is that all negative emotions and behaviors toward others are the result of that person being in pain. I started seeing all emotional outbursts, accusatory words, and harsh tones as what I would call a pain reaction, or Life Model calls a pain reaction. What happens is our pain reactions are connected to our weaknesses. So when someone is harsh toward another person, it's not about the person on the receiving end of the harsh words or the negative behavior from the other person. It's about the reactive person being in pain. The second important part of being able to respond well to people's weaknesses and pain reactions is to understand that those pain reactions are connected to an age where their emotional maturity has stunted. So many of us have gaps in our emotional maturity. I would say that all of us have gaps in our emotional maturity that connect to either childhood pain or skills that we didn't develop from our parents. It's often connected to our attachment. It's easier to not take harsh words personally when we can picture those words and behaviors from another person who is maybe 10 years old with big feelings. So think about it this way. If a client says, is mad because the session has to end, and you're picturing that client as a 10-year-old saying, I'm mad that you're ending the session when I have more things to say to you. It doesn't feel so threatening and so harsh when you're able to see that in that moment, the person's having a pain reaction that's connected to their weakness, and that weakness is from childhood, a gap where they haven't been able to develop that. Can you see how that can be more helpful in not taking things personally? I do. So the third part of learning how to respond to clients' pain reactions is to remind ourselves to be tender to weakness. I love this phrase. This is a life model phrase that I think about on a regular basis. So a person's pain reaction is connected to their weakness, and it's not about us not being good enough. It's about them being in pain. I love to say to myself, Sherry, be tender to weakness when I experience negativity from others, whether it's tones, words, or behaviors. So not only is this a reminder to notice that the other person is in pain, it's also a reminder of who I am. When I can acknowledge that the person is in pain and that my job is to be tender to their weakness, it helps me to remember who I truly am and who I am as a compassionate therapist and a protector of the weak. All of these things work together to help us not to take things so personal, and to just be able to notice that the other person's in pain, and it's not about us in that moment. It's about them not being able to regulate their own emotions and maybe experiencing some attachment pain in that moment. Thanks for listening to this video. I really hope it was helpful. And we're so passionate about helping therapists just grow in so many areas of life, professionally and personally. And so be sure to check out our previous content and stay tuned for helpful information on how you can grow as a therapist.